Well, hi, everyone. Welcome to the Product Training Call. I'm AJ Willoughby. So glad to be with you. We have got an exciting call tonight. We've got two testimonials from a couple of ladies that are fabulous people who have incredible life-changing stories that you're going to hear about tonight. And also Dr. Templeman, who's going to be joining us, who is here with us already, who is going to be talking and telling us why we're seeing these and how this is happening, and a little bit more information about that. So we're going to go ahead and let's just get dived right in. And first thing we want to do is we're going to go to Lisa Young. For those that haven't had a chance to meet Lisa, she is fantastic woman who's been dealing with some issues. And rather than sharing everything, I'm going to let her share the story. Lisa, are you there?
I'm here, AJ.
All right. So, Lisa, why don't you go ahead and start sharing with us a little bit about what it is that you've been experiencing and some of the things that you've been dealing with.
Oh, absolutely. Hey, everyone. I got to tell you before we start, I love the core. Everyone should be taking the core. It changed my life completely, and the people that know me and are closest to me can let you know that. So I've been sick for several years, and I have a fatty liver that makes me very, very sick. Your stomach's bloated, the headaches, everything that comes along with the fatty liver. I could try to exercise as much as I can to lose the weight and eat carrots and exercise, and I would gain weight. So I gained the weight. My, painful stomach. I had arthritis in both knees. A Baker's cyst that popped out from the back of my knee, debilitating where I couldn't walk. So then this went on for a while, and doctors after doctors, and this doctor, and then this medicine, and we went round and round in months and months, and finally October of last year through January, I couldn't get out of bed. I was so incredibly sick with headaches, exhaustion, I had adrenal failure. I couldn't function. I couldn't work. Talking to anybody was a chore. It was getting through the day and not knowing what was going to get better. I started in January with the CoreAO, and it must have been the first week and a half, the Baker's cyst was gone from the back of my knee. And Baker's cysts are extraordinarily painful. My doctor couldn't believe it. I showed her, because the x-rays of my knees and the pain I was in, couldn't believe that it was just gone. Soon after that, I was walking again. I could walk downstairs, started walking the dogs. I could go outside. Bear with me, I'm getting emotional thinking about my past in the last few months. And this was just January of this year. I slowly started to come out of it. I could think clearly again. The pain, my joints my hands were always swollen and painful. My ankles, my knees, my feet, always swollen, hard to walk. Plantar fasciitis, however you pronounce that. So the core, Dr. Templeman walked me through. We started, because I was so incredibly sick, we started with, I took one a day. And then after like the first week or two, we upped it to 2. And then finally, I just gave my body everything it could take. And I drink to this day 3 a day. It's only been a few months, but I went from, I couldn't get out of bed, showering. It was pure exhaustion, headaches, every single day, some headaches that took me down to where I couldn't function for 3 to 5 days at a time. It was so bad. Today, I've moved into a big house. I am full forged ahead with M Network. I'm doing stuff for charities now. I have more energy than I've had in years. My liver's better. I don't have headaches. I can enjoy all the people around me, my kids, and I can't thank Dr. Templeman, M Network. You guys are just amazing how you walk us through this and give us this product. and to not share with somebody else is so sad because it is life-changing, and I'm out to change the world with the core.
Wonderful. That is incredible. Well, Dr. Templeman, I'm gonna turn it over to you, let you talk to Lisa for a moment here
Sure.
and talk a little bit about what's going on and maybe ask her a couple questions yourself.
I saw a couple of comments come up, AJ. Someone was asking what kind of arthritis did she have in her knees? And the fact is that she may have had a systemic situation where all of her joints were hurting, which would have been full body inflammation. But if there were arthritis, I think at her age, it would probably be osteoarthritis that she would be having without another pointed diagnosis. And that means that the major ingredient in that kind of arthritis, as in most arthritises, is inflammation. In fact, any disease that ends in itis would be that. So fatty liver is a form of hepatitis or inflammation of the liver. And the reasons why she feels better, presumptively, and we can't make claims, but she has experienced this and told you her story. And when I look at the research behind the ingredients which we have placed in the core, I come most quickly to the mangosteen, which I know best. And the mangosteen is unquestionably the strongest anti-inflammatory element in the whole of the plant range where people get their supplements. And the mangosteen is a very effective blocker of the two major pathways that lead to inflammation. One is called tumor necrosis factor alpha pathway, and the second one is the PGE2 or the prostaglandin E2 pathway. Both of those are really the major contributors to the kind of arthritis that is, not arthritis, but inflammation that is experienced principally in joints, muscles, and connective tissue. And so I'm not surprised that she's had the kinds of results that she has had. And I think those are the kinds of things that we ought to be talking to people who have those problems and who may have been using numerous medications for them. We ought to be saying to them, why don't you try this and see what happens in your own case? We cannot predict, and we certainly can't promise that there's going to be a positive response. But as I've said many times before, the kind of results that I saw in my patients when I started to institute natural products for some of the drugs that I had been giving them was very, very salutary. They would very often respond with very effective relief of pain and swelling without side effects or without the dangers that doctors worry about when you're taking across-the-counter inflammation products, anti-inflammation products, such as ibuprofen or aspirin or any of their ilk. We worry about GI problems, we worry about kidney problems, and we worry about liver problems. So I think that Lisa's story is very striking. I don't know whether it represents what everybody is going to experience, but I do think that her story leads us to be able to say, why don't you try it, see what happens in your case, okay?
All right. So now, Lisa, tell us real quick, how would you describe the difference compared to where you're at to where you are now, as far as, you know, your quality of life right now? How big of a difference is that for you?
I'm a completely new person. I had the adrenal fatigue or failure or exhaustion where I could sleep under a tree. I was just exhausted. I could never sleep enough. And so getting out of bed was painful. My knees, my entire body was riddled with inflammation. So it was the pain and I'm allergic to painkillers. So I took nothing for pain. I had to walk through it and it was miserable. I couldn't do anything with my kids. I couldn't go out and work in the yard. It was hard to even try to think about building a business or working at that point. So it is night and day difference. I'm sitting right now. I'm in a new home on 7 acres, and before the call, I was out mowing the grass. So I couldn't have been able to ever do that when I was that sick. So it's completely, I'm a new person, and I'm thankful. And with the fatty liver and all my inflammation, when I was so miserable, I was extraordinarily bloated and I had gained the weight. I'm down 25 pounds. My stomach does not hurt at every turn. And I used to have to take enzymes for all the pain, for everything I ate and dealing with stuff in my digestive tract. I got rid of that, and I am a new person.
Wow, that is so awesome. Lisa, thank you so much for sharing this with us. I'll tell you, you hear stories like this, and there's people out there that are, there's like, I know someone who's got something like this. I know something similar. Will this work for them? You know what? Here's how you're going to know. Have them try it. Tell them, start trying this stuff and let them discover the results for themselves, because this is something that is changing lives. This is not just getting results. This is changing lives, as you're hearing right here. There's no reason anyone should be scared to present this to anyone or to explain or tell someone about this, because why in the world would you want someone to sit back and go through the pain and go through the agony of what so many people are going through right now, whenever there's something that this could be their answer, and this could be the thing that helps them and gives them that same life-changing results as what it's done for Lisa. Lisa, thank you so much. Let's go right now to a woman who is someone who I myself learned so much from, and she has been in this industry for a long time, and she's been around nutritionals and everything for so much of her life and understanding what it does. But she's at the same time also dealt with some very serious health issues that I'm just going to let her explain this. Some of you may already know her because she's very well known and very strong in the industry. Mrs. Kat Barnes. Kat, thank you for being on the call. Tell us your story.
Well, thanks for having me, AJ. Well, everybody who knows me knows that I have an awful lot of energy, and I'm always doing something. And I'm also ADHD, so I don't sleep a lot. Although we do have a product that helps me with that a lot also. But last May, I was diagnosed. I was feeling really down, and I was sleeping a lot, and I don't sleep. I mean, 2 to 3 hours a night, and then every fourth or fifth night, 5 or 6 hours, that was it. And I've always got a lot of energy. And last May, I just felt draggy, and I wanted to sleep, and I didn't have any energy, and it was an effort to do everything, and my body ached and everything else. And finally, I went in and I was tested, and I had Epstein-Barr. And I've dealt with a lot of people at Epstein-Barr, and I really regretfully now say that I was not very empathetic because I'm not used to people not having a lot of energy. But it laid me out. It just totally laid me out. I mean, it was an effort to get up and get my daughter to school. And I take care of, I've got a 14-year-old daughter. I've got an 81-year-old mother. I've got 2 Great Danes. I've got a puggle. And I also coach Ultimate Frisbee. So I've got a pretty busy lifestyle. Plus I've got a wonderful business with M. So it just laid me out. So I immediately started taking, when I found out what I had, I immediately started taking 4 of, not the new core, but the core that we had back then in May. And I was taking 4 a day. And when I took 4 a day, I got up to what would be, I could function. I mean, I got through the day. I didn't have my usual full energy, but I got through the day and I was able to go ahead and get everything done and still have energy to go ahead and get other things taken care of. And then, now this is how I know that this works, okay? Now, I've always been a big fan of mangosteen, you know that. But so I do that for like 2 weeks, and then I kind of get complacent and I go down to 2 or 1 core a day. And all it took was doing that maybe 1 or 2 days in a row, and I was laid out for 4 days again. It took me that long to go ahead and build it back up. And I go ahead and I start taking the mangosteen again, start taking the core again, and I do, like that, go back to 4, and I'd be fine. And then, of course, being me, I'd go ahead and forget to take, I take one day. Like I always take at least 1, but I take 1 and then, no, I'll take 1 a little later on, and I wouldn't. And then the next day I'd be laid out again. So I know it works. So because of my negligence on my own part, it took me 4 months to get over it because I kept doing that. But that's how I know it works, because every time I did it, I was laid out flat on my back again. And for me, that's just, it's just not acceptable, period. And then so I go ahead and start doing the 4 again. And it got to the point where my mother, my 81-year-old mother, was laying out 4 a day for me. And she'd make sure that I took every single one of them. I mean, it's like, did you take your core? Did you take your core today? and I'd have to go ahead and I'd take my core. I'd make sure I got in every single one of them. And the days that I didn't, I felt it. There was no question about it. So for me, that's absolute proof. And anybody who has ever had Epstein-Barr, I totally understand now what you mean by all you want to do is crawl back in bed and go to sleep. You just can't move. And then what the doctors tell you to do is rest and drink a lot of water, right? Hydrate. Well, the hydration is not a problem for me. Resting was. And by the way, for most of us, that's just not an option. We have life that has to go on, and we have to go ahead and take care of things. So it was a total eye-opening experience for me. And it was actually pretty devastating too, because I realized all of a sudden that I was human. But I do know that the mangosteen works. So, I mean, I'm a testimony right there.
Fantastic.
So, Dr. Templeman, tell us a little bit about what's happening here and what.
Okay, well, first, what I want to do is tell you that I recently had a patient, a 22-year-old young man, who had the worst case of Epstein-Barr that I have ever seen. And he was in hospital on 3 occasions because your immune system is depressed when you have Epstein-Barr virus. And he developed pneumonia and had to go into the hospital, even though the major thing that he had up until that time had not taken him to the hospital. He ended up in the hospital. And he was in bed for 8 weeks. He lost 28 pounds. And his complete energy was gone when he got out of bed finally and began to feel better. And by the way, the family wouldn't let me use any supplements because other doctors were involved, and I just didn't have the credibility. I say my patient, he's a friend, he's the son of a friend of mine and a great guy. And so I looked after him very often. So he became my patient by default. But the doctors involved in this case had recommended against trying, quote, anything strange. And so I wasn't able to do it. I wish I had been able to give him something strange. Now, Epstein-Barr infections manifest with two major clinical presentations. One of them in young people mostly is mononucleosis, or what we used to call kissing disease, because you can get it from drinking from the same cup, kissing somebody. It's body fluids that transmit this, and it's very infectious. And what happens with mononucleosis, and it can be relatively mild or it can be extremely dangerous, like this young man whose liver enzymes were the highest that I have ever seen in a mononucleosis case. But you have fatigue, incredible fatigue. Very often you have fever, and he had high fever. You have decreased appetite, and I told you he lost 28 pounds. You have a rash, and in the early stages of this, he did have the rash, and he had a sore throat too in the early stages, and he had lymphadenopathy, meaning the lumps that doctors feel in your neck. And I wasn't certain that it was Epstein-Barr, but I sent him out for what is called a monospot, and we did get a diagnosis from that. But he was complaining of aching muscles. And when you have this, your muscles really, really ache. But on top of all that, with the fatigue, you have something which is called malaise. And that just means just a state of generalized discomfort. And it hurts everywhere. And you just don't feel good. And on top of that, then your large muscles ache like crazy. And after you've had this for a while, and you've been very weak and you can't literally get up. He used to have to get up from bed with help, lean against the bathroom door, go into the bathroom, spend perhaps 15 to 20 minutes in there, not because he was doing anything that needed to be done in the bathroom, but he was trying to get the strength to pull himself back up literally by grabbing onto the sink and standing up and then coming to the door and needing help to get to bed. It can be that bad. And after he finished with about 3 or 4 weeks of this, he was depressed, clinically depressed, because his life had gone. He couldn't go to work, couldn't go to school, couldn't do any of the things that he normally was able to do. And it's an awful, awful disease. Now, in adults, more often, it manifests the way it did in cat, with chronic fatigue syndrome. And I can remember, I'm an old enough doctor that I can remember when there really wasn't a disease called chronic fatigue. And we used to think that people were just putting it on. And we would very often accuse them of, just grab yourself by the bootstraps, get out, get going. All you need is some more willpower. Because in most instances, there is only a very slight change in many people with chronic fatigue syndrome in the objective measures of stuff that we would look at in their blood. Now we understand it much better. But chronic fatigue is characterized, strangely enough, not only by physical fatigue, but by real cognitive problems. You end up in something that people have now called brain fog. And that can be manifest by just a difficulty sorting to form thoughts, and you have very bad short-term memory. So you'll actually be talking, trying to put your thoughts into words, and end up pausing because they're gone. You just can't do it. You have difficulty forming them, and you have difficulty expressing them clearly. You may have difficulty even understanding speech of other people, and you have decreased concentration. You can't watch a movie through because you can't follow the plot. You can't read a book because you can't remember what you just read in the paragraph before. It's pretty numbing. Now, I had it when I was in medical school in my 3rd year of residency. It was horrible. I was working about 80 hours a week very often. Back then, they really worked their residents more than they do now. It was kind of like the 19th century sweatshops where they used to work children. They worked residents like that. But I remember I used to watch the census on the floor where I was working or assigned, so I would know which rooms were empty, because if I got a chance, I would go in there and just lay down for 15 minutes or so and then have to pry myself back up. And I had all of those cognitive problems that I talked to you about, so I wasn't doing well in school. Thank goodness I already had my degree, and I was just trying to be able to get out as a family doctor. But you have erratic sleep, and my sleep was so disturbed, it was non-restorative. You would have insomnia, you'd be so tired that you might be yawning, your body would just be crying out for a mattress, and then you'd lay down and your brain wouldn't stop. And it would just keep going, and you can't get to sleep. And people who have chronic fatigue syndrome have the fatigue amplified by the fact that there's non-restorative sleep. This also results in a dampening of the immune system. So you end up catching intercurrent infections. If a sniffle comes by, you're going to get a head cold. It's just really very difficult. And you also have muscle and joint pain, just like you do with mononucleosis. But in addition to that, because people are usually up and moving around, they can have vertigo, blurred vision. They can have ringing in their ears. They can feel nauseous because they're so dizzy. And that's not an extraordinary case. You have this in most cases. There's something called post-exertional malaise. In other words, you get up, you go to the kitchen, you make yourself a sandwich, you go back to the bedroom, and you can't eat it because you got to lie down. You're tired from just getting up and going to the kitchen and coming back. It's really strange how bad it can get. Not only that, but you can have sensitivity that is heightened to external stimuli, so that noise will get you irritated. Light will get you irritated. And I remember snapping at my family when somebody would come in and turn the light on in the room where I was lying down, trying to get a little bit of rest. It was really bad. You can have GI problems, nausea, diarrhea, bloating, and of course your liver is involved, and your liver enzymes are inevitably going to be raised, although they may not be raised to the point where your doctor is going to make a diagnosis that you can't quite do the same thing that you can with mononucleosis. There we have a monospot test. With chronic fatigue, sometimes it's less well defined. We know it's Epstein-Barr, and we can take a look at it, but most people, unfortunately, would test positive for Epstein-Barr after they got into adulthood. They probably had problems. Now, you can have paresthesias. In other words, you can have tickling on your feet, or you can have itchiness on your feet, on your hands, on your head. You can have numbness, and you can even have a burning sensation. And strangely enough, people with chronic fatigue syndrome really can't stand up for long periods of time. Remember I told you, I watched for chairs, I watched for empty beds. You just can't stand up, and it's not that the dizziness may be there, or it's not lightheadedness. You just have this overwhelming urge to lie down. Now, let me tell you why I believe that the core is likely to be helping people with these kinds of symptoms. First of all, as I told you, inflammation is involved in this, and the mangosteen and several of those other antioxidants that are in the core are really the best things that you could possibly get from the plant world to try and dampen the inflammation that comes along with these kinds of situations. But when I started to use the mangosteen in my patients, we had a product that had not even been commercialized yet. That I was asked to use it for one year approximately in my patients before it came to market. And I took my 24 worst patients. Now, I say worst, patients who hadn't responded to the normal kinds of things that I did. And they had serious and they had not so serious concerns, but they just weren't responding. They had either had a bad reaction to a medication, or the standard medication just hadn't given them relief to their problems. And I asked them to participate in a 4-week trial, actually 5 weeks, if I remember correctly. And they had to give me their symptoms on a weekly basis and check on a scale of 1 to 5 where their symptoms were. And because I insisted on that, and I had a scarce supply of this particular product, mangosteen, I insisted on that, and 4 of them didn't give it to me for 2 weeks, and I dropped them out of the trial. 20 of the 24 completed the 5-week trial. And interestingly enough, and here's the point I'm trying to make, when I asked them in their commentary, not just in their symptoms, but in their commentary to tell me what they experienced, every single one of them said, it gave me energy. Now, when a doctor sees patients who I call the walking wounded, they're still managing in life, but they've got things that are really impeding their performance and their function. These people really almost always have fatigue. And I'd check their thyroid and I'd check their blood to see that they weren't anemic. I would sometimes do some adrenal studies to see if there were abnormalities. But if there were no abnormalities, then the doctor's limited. He has no medications. There isn't a single medication for fatigue. It just isn't there. And while we use stimulants, we don't use them. They're contraindicated for people who are just saying that they're fatigued, because fatigue can be a presentation of many serious illnesses, and you want to treat the underlying condition if you can. But fatigue by itself is awful. And the only thing that I found in the 30 years that I was interacting with patients was that I could give them this extract. And by the way, I could only do that in the last 18 years. But I could give them this natural product, and almost always they experienced, regardless what the underlying disease may have been, they almost always experienced an increase in energy. And that is a finding that I think is probably worth $1 million to anybody who has the kinds of problems that Kat had, or the kinds of problems that Lisa had. Being able to have some energy, being able to live your life, do the things that other people expect of you, it is a wonderful state of being. And you don't really appreciate it until you lose it. That's it.
Awesome. Awesome. So, Kat, tell us in a sentence or two here, what would you say the difference in your quality of life from where you've been before Core to what your quality of life is now?
No comparison, absolutely no comparison. I've never not had energy, and he's right. The energy was a huge part of it, but just being able to function. And when he said body fatigue, I understand that too. But one of the other things is I'm a swimmer. I usually swim all summer long, at least 4 or 5 days a week. And I had the rash, and I forgot about that. I had the rash that he had, and you can't get in the pool with a rash. So last summer in Arizona, I never went to the pool and swam. And for me, that's a huge quality of life. So, I mean, the difference is there's no comparison. I mean, I really could not survive without it. I couldn't function, and I couldn't do all the things that I really needed to do. But not only that, but the things that I wanted to. So there's no comparison.
And now here we are with even an updated version of the Core, staying on top of technology and always innovating with M and making sure that the product we have is always the absolute best that could ever be developed. Thank you so much to that, Dr. Templeman, for making sure that we've always got the absolute best thing that there ever could be. We're seeing more and more lives changed like this. And the stories that we're hearing is just incredible how this is changing people's lives. Lisa, thank you so much. Lisa, do you have anything else to say, or Kat?
I'll tell you what, with the new Core, I probably want to take 1 or 2. And not only that, but I love the new flavor, Dr. Templeman. I love the new flavor. It's absolutely fantastic. And I do feel the difference. I really do. So thank you for doing that. I really appreciate it. I love Core. I love mangosteen, and I love you. Thank you.
Awesome. Lisa, how about you? Anything else?
Absolutely. We were talking about sharing with other people, and I'm blessed to work for a veterans charity that I do work with, and I get to call these guys. And then I go through talking to them and things, and they have, they're disabled vets. So they deal with inflammation and all these things. And I say to them, hey, would you be willing to try this? And he said, as long as it's not, through the VA or drugs or anything, they want something natural to make them feel better. So I get to share the Core with these vets that want to feel better. And they've been, through the VA, they've been down that road. So every day, no matter who I run into, I'm sharing the Core because it is life-changing. And I have my story. I have other stories. So I'm blessed that I get to go and share with the veterans of the U.S. and say, hey, I want to help you feel better. So I love Dr. Templeman. I love the Core. And yes, I love the taste. It is phenomenal.
Awesome. Wonderful. Well, thank you again, Dr. Templeman. Any last words?
Just to say that the lesson that I have from the last half of my life in practice as a primary care physician, learn that most of the problems that you have can be fixed with lifestyle changes and the use of proper diet with very judicious supplementation. And this product has such a broad range of effects. We may have a chance, depending on what I hear during the next week or so, to be able to have people talking about completely different medical problems helped by this product. It is really a remarkable product. Now, we don't talk about it curing, treating, or doing anything except try it, see what happens with your problems, see what your body can do if you give it just a little bit more to work with.
Wonderful. Thank you, everybody. And thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. And I'll tell you, this has been incredible information we've gotten. Don't forget, tomorrow night, we've got the corporate training call where Ryan Anderson has guests that join him and they talk about building your business. And then on Saturday, Dennis Ligon with the Empower call and bringing leaders on to help with that. Monday mornings, Andy Willoughby has a call that he does, a great team call there. And Kat shares her Kat call. Get a chance to hear from Kat on Thursday evenings. So lots of calls that are going on. You don't want to miss out on these and your chance to really get things into the hands of people and find out more about what these products do and what this business does and how these products change lives. And you know what? We're having people that lives are being changed, not just through the products, but from the business side of this too. Get with the person who's been telling you about this if you're not already a part of this, because you want to find out and you want to know how this product is going to change your life and how this business could change your life in a financial way too. So it's really incredible. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night.